Hello, I'm Ruben Bressler, and I'm here in the Sideboard with Chris Cornwell-Shiel, who is fairly well known for bringing weird, interesting decks to tournaments, and today is no exception. I think that when Return to Ravnica came out, the one of the first cards spoiled that was exciting people was Rakdos' Return, and it hasn't really found a home yet until now. So you've sort of found a home for Rakdos' Return. Tell us a little bit about your deck.
Basically, the idea is to throw out a couple chump blockers to take care of their creatures, make them discard their hand, and then sit behind a Shrieking Affliction and win the game.
Right, and you mentioned Shrieking Affliction. We may have to tell you what Shrieking Affliction does. It's sort of like the Rack.
A little bit worse.
It's a little bit worse. They need to have one or fewer cards in hand.
Yes.
And then they'll take 3 damage every time. And it's a 1-mana black enchantment from Return to Ravnica. And you're playing 4 of them.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about why you decided Shrieking Affliction was going to be your card for the tournament.
Pretty much any time a new block comes out or a new set comes out, I find a little card that I know nobody's going to be playing, buy a bunch of them, hope I can win a tournament. Usually fail, but I have a lot of fun building a ridiculous deck.
Sure.
Like last time it was Rage Extractor, this time it's Shrieking Affliction.
Nice. And another card that hasn't really found a home yet in Standard is Mutilate. And you have 3 Mutilates here as your Wrath, basically.
Yeah.
And you're, of course, running a lot of Swamps and Blood Crypt. Has Mutilate really been performing super well for you so far?
It's actually been one of the best cards in the deck, next to, obviously, the Shrieking Afflictions.
Sure.
Gotta plug it, you know.
Of course.
But generally, I can't Mutilate for more than 3 or 4, but if you think about it, Thragtusk is at 3.
Yeah.
Huntmaster is at 2. Like, you really don't need it for any more than 3 in most cases, and with it at 3, I can keep some of my creatures alive on occasion.
Nice.
But I generally have to flip the Bloodline Keeper if I'm going that route.
Right, and of course your creatures are, you have 4 Vampire Nighthawks, but your big end creatures are 2 Desecration Demons and 2 Bloodline Keeper.
Yeah.
Neither of which is the most popular creature in Standard, but can take over a game by themselves. Which, what made you decide on the 2-2 split here?
The Bloodline Creepers were actually a last addition to the deck. They were originally Olivia Voldarans, but I couldn't get my hands on them because apparently nobody has them anymore.
Yeah, it's a very popular card. It's sort of been taking over the metagame. We saw in Cincinnati last week that Olivia was performing very well.
Yeah.
But Bloodline Keeper certainly doesn't do the same thing that Olivia does, but it does something completely different that can overpower unsuspecting opponents.
Well, I mean, basically what happened with that is I played a local tournament last weekend, and obviously didn't have the Olivias, so I grabbed 2 Bloodline Keepers, threw them in, hoped for the best, and against the aggro decks, it just worked amazingly because you always have a blocker.
Yep.
Like, you're never behind if you have a Bloodline Keeper.
Now this deck looks like it performs really, really well against the blue-white-red control deck that won last week. We've got the full set of Dreadbores, which are very good against tap-out style control decks. We've also got 2 Stenzia Bloodhole. Is that mainly for Planeswalkers?
It's mostly for Planeswalkers. It's also just something else to get extra damage in when you can.
Nice. And so it looks like this is a very good answer to the current metagame when you've got the red, white, blue control decks that are trying to hide behind tap-out answers. You've got all this discard, all this Planeswalker control. Then there's the green, white decks, and you can just make them, you can just kill all their creatures, basically.
Yeah.
With so much elimination and mutilate. And then all of the other stuff you can just sort of sop up with your discard spells. You can, pretty much everything gets impacted by duress, so.
Yeah. Like, everybody's got their Planeswalkers you can hit. If not, they've got a draw spell or something like Grizzly Salvage or something like that, you know? Like, you're almost always going to hit with a duress. If not, you're probably ahead anyway.
Right.
And if you want something to beat the control decks, you're looking at it. I have lost maybe 3 games in testing out of maybe 50 matches to control.
Nice. Now, looking at your sideboard, it seems like first of all, you're hedging a little bit towards the Reanimator matchup with 2 Rakdos Charms, a Tormod's Crypt, a Grafdigger's Cage, and a full set of Slaughter Games.
Yeah.
Do those all come in against the Reanimator style decks?
Absolutely. Generally, I side out a lot of my creatures in that and just go strictly control. Just try and kill everything they can put on the board and hope for the best. It's by far the worst matchup I have because obviously I'm trying to make them discard their cards and they're trying to abuse their graveyard.
Sure.
So it gets real awkward, and it's easily the hardest matchup for me to win.
Now, you do have the full 4 of Slaughter Games. Now, there's been a little bit of press this week about Slaughter Games as the answer for either red-black zombies or something like this, to the red, white, blue control deck. Now, you don't necessarily need the help, but those come in that matchup as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like, naming and treat the Angels versus control just absolutely blows them out. They can't really beat me at that point.
Right.
Like, they can sit there and stall, but I'm going to win that race.
Yeah, because their other win condition really is ultimating Jason grabbing your win condition.
Right.
But you don't really have anything that they want to steal.
Yeah.
Especially after sideboard.
Yeah.
So it seems like the most solid game plan. And you've also got more sweepers. You got 2 more Mizium Mortars and a Blasphemous Act, which is mostly, I imagine, for the green-white decks that are popping up.
Well, the Blasphemous Act came in due to the local metagame, where there were quite a few of the mono-white and blue-white human variants, and they just put out so many creatures I couldn't handle it, and they would just overwhelm me, so 3 extra board sweepers went in.
Sure. Like Blasphemous Act seems very good against Precinct Captain, for example.
Yeah.
And of course we have the ubiquitous Pillar of Flames. I don't think we have to explain to the folks at home what that's for.
Yeah, we all know.
But zombies is still a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're looking for something that's going to take apart the metagame as it currently sits, maybe try Shrieking Affliction. Who knows? Chris, thank you for joining me.
Not a problem.